As you stay at home for the COVID-19 pandemic, here are some things for you to contemplate while you're staying at home. On May 22nd, 1961, at 10:30 in the morning, an unknown person wrote what he or she called prayer for the day. And here's what the prayer said. There is no music in arrest, but there is the making of music in it. In our whole life melody, the music is broken off here and there by rests. And there are even times when we think we have come to the end of the tune. God sends a time of forced leisure, sickness, disappointed plans, frustrated efforts, and makes a sudden pause in the choral hymn of our lives, and we lament that our voices must be silent and our part missing in the music which ever goes up to the ear of the Creator. How does the musician read a rest? See him beat time with unvarying count and catch up the next note, true and steady, as if no breaking place had come between. Not without design does God write the music of our lives, but be it ours to learn the time and not be dismayed at the rest. They are not to be slurred over, nor to change the keynote. If we will look up, God Himself will beat the time for us. With the eye on Him, we shall strike the next note full and clear. We see sickness, disappointed plans, frustrated efforts, and things like that as an interruption in our lives, the way we want to live our lives, and that's kind of like what the COVID-19 pandemic is doing to us right now. We think these ruin our plans, but truly it just might be, at least consider that it might be, that the Lord is imposing upon us a time of rest in the music of our lives, because He knows that we learn during those times of rest. He knows that we do some thinking, even some life-changing thinking and decisions, and that's a good thing, especially when it's for a good cause or whatever. And we need to see that we are not the conductor of our lives. God is. And God has written our music, and He is the one who is leading it. In a song, the writer has placed a rest and has different symbols for labeling just how long that rest shall last. Now, the writer of the song may place that rest there for emphasis. Maybe we just need to catch our breath at this point, or sometimes we don't even know why. But if we just follow the leader, rest when He tells us to rest and sing when He wants us to sing, sometimes we'll discover, oh, now I understand why that rest came. And sometimes we just never do anyways, but that's okay, because He's the one who's leading and conducting the music of our lives. He's the one who's writing it, and He knows how it sounds best. The power of the rest is like the power of the pause to a comedian. Most of the time, if the comedian's really good, he'll tell you a joke, and then the comedian will pause. And during that pause, the comedian knows that you're putting together all the thoughts, you're following what he has said, because as he's speaking, you're hearing and discerning is behind a little bit, and so he stops to let you catch up, and then you laugh. You finally get the point. A professional speaker is the same way. Not when he necessarily wants to make a joke or something, but when he's trying to drive home a point. And he makes the point, he's been presenting some arguments, and then boom, he hits his conclusion and he stops. Same idea. he's been speaking, developing his thoughts, and you're back here hearing these things, and you're taking in what he's saying, and then he stops, and now you catch up to him, and then boom, you get it, and the point's made. Whereas if the comedian told the joke, and then immediately went into another one, people wouldn't laugh, and he would wonder, what's wrong? Why aren't these people laughing? Or what's wrong with my jokes or something? And the same thing with the public speaker. Why aren't people getting what I'm saying? Well, it's because they're not using the power of the pause. And again, that's what the rest is in music. It's maybe for us to get it sometimes, to think about what's been going on, or who knows what. But in the music of our lives, the power of the pause is very important, and it helps us to get the point of what my life is all about. God forces a rest. Yes, we need to be productive citizens. We get that idea from God himself. He's the one who wants us to work, and yet he also wants us to rest every day. What is it, about a third of every day he wants us to be resting, sleeping? He gave the children of Israel the Sabbath, a day in which he wanted his people to rest for the whole day, every single week. That makes rest very important to him, and he knows how we need it. I'm not just talking about the physical rest, although that's important too, but also our minds. Sometimes we just need to stop and think about spiritual things, or whatever the case might be. It might be some other things as well. David wrote some of his most magnificent psalms when he was ill. When you read the story of David in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel, you don't so much see his illnesses there, but when you read the Psalms, you come across the ones that he wrote where he often talked about being very sick, even to the point of death. And yet it was during those times that he wrote some powerful psalms, such as in this one here when he said, "The Lord will strengthen him on his bed of illness. You will sustain him on his sick bed." Again, doesn't God drive us to rest every day when we need our sleep? And yet I know that he could have created us so that we just continue to function, that we wouldn't need any rest. And the reason I know that is because when we are resting, our bodies are still functioning, are they not? I mean, for example, the heart. If the heart stops, well, you've got some major problems. So for some reason, he wants us to have rest. Quite often, really, when you think about it. We see rest as something that's inconvenient, something that's happening when we don't want it to happen, and that frustrates us. But if we keep our eyes on the song leader, in this case, God, then those times won't be so frustrating. So does he stop the music of our lives, forcing us to take that rest, that we might learn something new, that we might remember that he's the song leader and not we ourselves? Or do we need to think on something that just happened in our lives? I don't know. But all I am saying is, when these times of rest are forced upon us, why not take advantage of it? Yeah, I understand the frustration. I don't like being sick, or I don't like being told I can't go anywhere or whatever. But that's the way it is sometimes, so let's use it to our advantage. The music of life continues. At some point in your life, you will realize that someone else is writing the music. Someone else all along has been leading the song. And when you get in tune with him, you discover suddenly your life improves dramatically. And I don't mean by that everything all of a sudden starts to go perfectly for you, because that won't be the case. But you'll look at life differently. You'll look at the success as well as the adversity of your life with different eyes. And you'll know that someone else is in charge and that you're following his lead. The song leader, the conductor, just continues to beat the time to the music, but he's in charge, and our job is to follow the leader. And that way we know when to start again. And so it is with life. He gives all the instructions that we need for singing the music of our lives. When the time of forced rest comes upon us, we think it's never going to end. Okay, I'm recording this on April 2nd, and we have found out that we need to be staying in our homes for this whole month of April. And we've already been doing it a couple weeks. That's frustrating, is it not? And it gets frustrating when we look away from the leader of our lives. But when we start to look back to him again, then our perspective on life changes. God is in charge. He writes and leads the music of our lives, but sometimes we forget and we want to write our own tune. Do you remember Jonah? Have you ever read the book of Jonah in the Old Testament, in the Bible? If not, I strongly encourage you to read the book of Jonah, because Jonah wanted to write his own tune. God told him, go to the city of Nineveh and preach to it what I tell you to say to them. And Jonah thought, no, I don't want to do that. So he went to the coast and he got on a ship and tried to flee in the opposite direction. And he ran into a huge storm. When the mariners found out what he was doing, they threw him overboard. And of course, you've heard the story about this great fish that the Lord had prepared to swallow Jonah. And he was in there for 3 days before he had a change of heart and realized that he needed to do what the Lord said. So the fish vomits him up on the land. He goes to Nineveh. He preaches the message that God wants him to preach, and the city repents. And it's like he can't handle it. He goes up on a hill above the city, and he wants to see what's going to happen. He tried to write his own tune. He tried to lead the music of his life, and it didn't work. He ran into all kinds of problems. And we need to learn from his example. Let us remember that when we confessed Jesus is Lord to be saved, that we were not saying some kind of secret code in order to be saved. When you confess the lordship of Jesus Christ, you are confessing that you are no longer the Lord of your life. He is the Lord. He's the one who is running it. And you realize that He rules over all. That's just not a statement you have to make in order to be saved. It should be the belief of your heart that He's the Lord, He's running the show, not me, and I'll do what He directs me to do. We have to learn the timing of the song in our lives, and we learn by watching Him. Watching Him, we don't have to guess because He knows what He's doing. And when we come to that realization, it's such an enlightenment. God knows what He's doing, and every time I disregard what He says and I try and do it my own way, somehow it just doesn't work out the way I was thinking or hoping that it would work out. Therefore, we cannot let the rests that come up in our lives that are often forced upon us to frustrate us. As in music, the rest doesn't mean that the song has stopped permanently. Oh yes, there's a point where eventually the song will end, just like there's a point where eventually our lives will end. But a rest in the middle of a song is just that, it's a rest. It's momentary, it's not permanent. So we cannot change the music of our lives. So why not enjoy the rest and gain from the break and see what it is that the God of heaven is seeking to teach you or that He thinks you need to learn. Jesus saw this in His disciples, and according to the Gospel of Mark, He wrote this for us. And Jesus said to them, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat." Jesus was all about putting the Spirit first. But since he was the creator of the human body, he also knew the needs of the body. And so they were so busy looking after everyone else that they didn't even have time to take rest so they could just eat a meal. And he'd said, let's go aside for a while and take a break. Moses led Israel in a magnificent song found in Exodus 15. And here, Moses led Israel in singing this: "The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him." So he is our song. And if he's our song leader, he has to have our attention. A song leader cannot lead a group of people in singing if they're not paying attention to him. So I want to ask you, what is the God of heaven doing to get your attention? Are you watching him? Are you listening to him? Use this time that you have to stay in your homes to learn what you can, to think and to discover something about you and God and your relationship with one another. What does he have to do to get your attention? And I'd like to ask you this. Are you one of his children? Are you a follower of Jesus of Nazareth? If you've read the Bible, you can probably see that the Bible claims that Jesus of Nazareth is the Son of God. Do you believe that? If you do, are you willing to bring your life into harmony with his teachings? Some of which I've quoted to you in this message. If you're at that point, you're now ready to be born again. He has said that when you are immersed in water, that the one who's baptizing you is burying a dead person. And then when you come up out of the water, you're now walking in newness of life. Do you believe in Jesus? Are you ready to turn your life around? And are you ready to start over? You can do that by being baptized into Christ, being fully immersed in water. Thank you for listening.